Hi, I am Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NVLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoyed today's episodes.
Yeah, that seems great too, to have a story like that you know of already. I was curious if you know like where your users coming from, like different parts of the country.
Yeah, all over North America. We're definitely see more clusters on the coasts, but we do see people in Middle America and all throughout. We really want to build that user base up as well, especially because a lot of those states in the Middle America have such high disability rates. But I'm guessing this is typical for the other dating apps too, just like the big metro cities, LA, New York, Miami.
Well, they always
Boston.
launch. Think about what we saw that
Yeah.
self-driving car in Arizona, and like, yeah, you want like they always launch in those cities first. Like Uber, I remember when Uber finally came to DC when I was in law school there, and it had been in New York, and we were just waiting. We knew it was coming, but yeah, we do want to build it up, and we want to start going international. That's on our plans for the end of the year, because there's really nothing like this in the entire world. It's really wild to me, but we will get messages every week from people in Spain, France, Australia, UK. And so we're gonna start out, with English speaking countries and get our try to get our feet wet there and then expand. And then once we can, hopefully we're launching a subscription model later this summer. So we'll have always a free version, but we'll have some revenue from that. We can start hiring customer service reps for other languages and really start to globalize.
That's
That
awesome.
makes sense.
And where are you two living?
I live in San Diego.
Okay.
Same. So definitely on that coast. And
Yeah.
what you described, and hey, you go for the big cities first. That is the model. That was the model we did at Uber, as you noted. And because it's all about liquidity, right? Like, do you have enough people on the app so that when people open it, they're like, oh, I can find interesting people, or do I open it up and there's just one person, or there's nobody, or hey, there's several people, but they're all interested in, I don't know, LARPing, and I'm not into LARPing, so who knows?
Yeah.
What is LARPing?
Oh, I'm not a LARPer, but now I'm going to sound like I'm the voice for all LARPers. Live action role play. So you ever seen those movies where they have the people who get in and they got the medieval armor now, but they got the big foam swords and they just have a big battle?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen that. But I really like
seen,
Revolutionary and Civil War reenactments. Is it like that?
I think you've seen Horrible Bosses, the movie, and they're like LARPers.
I actually have not.
Oh, okay. Well.
So that's okay. So I'm okay. I'm not ignorant.
Google how to LARP. A great YouTube video is sure to pop up. Probably a lot easier than building an app. Never done it, but I always find it to be a fascinating thing to watch.
Yeah, I know which rabbit hole I'm going down later.
Yeah. You're totally right. And when we launched, we were really, we knew that there were going to be people who would sign on and not see a single person. And so we wanted to combat that by having an optional location function so that like people can see elsewhere. So you're in San Diego, but you could match with someone in Pennsylvania. And that has really been successful. And that's how the couple that I mentioned before started dating. They live 900 miles away. Now they're moving to a brand new state together to start their life. So that's great. But then yeah, we have another couple who happened to be in the same city, and they're both on the autism spectrum, and they're going to be celebrating their 1-year anniversary this year. So we really have tried to think of every little thing that the community would want, and that virtual connection is also important for the disability community, because I mean, not only with the pandemic like throwing a wrench in everything and people being more open to virtual companionship, but just like accessibility and safety, I think that starting out virtually is not a bad idea.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, my whole podcast is virtual, so
Yeah.
I know how that feels.
Well,
Um,
one quick thing, you mentioned the location, or changing your location to match with other people. As you're looking at revenue models, and you may already know this, you've probably done all your research. That is a very sought after feature, and most of the dating apps make that a premium feature, and it drives a lot of revenue around it. The only time, and I believe it hasn't been for the main apps, was during COVID when Tinder made on Tinder's Passport, it's Tinder Passport, right? They made that a free feature so that people could just talk to people anywhere in the world because we were all bored. And it was a huge success, but it drives so much revenue being able to have that. So up to you how you want to do those tiers, but just a little tidbit if you don't know.
I think it would definitely, like, as we grow, yeah, that's something we would add and take away.
I didn't know Tinder did that during COVID, and that's like,
But you did know or didn't? Oh.
And that's really nice. And like, I like,
You're like, darn, missed opportunity.
no, it's just like, I don't know. It's like that just time period that we were all locked up and
Kind of nice to each other sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna start asking you guys basically what you think the pros and cons are of dating apps versus in-person dating, where you would meet somebody in person rather than online. And like comparing that for your customer base, Jacqueline and Alexa, and your customer clients, Jonathan.
I mean, I'm somebody who has never met anyone online. I've always met my former partners in person, but I haven't been on a date in like years. And the pandemic threw a wrench in that, and now I'm busy.
2020 was the first time you ever signed up for a dating app.
And so, but I do think like I'm really busy and I don't know, like I don't have a whole lot of time to go out. And when I go out, I'm usually seeing my good friends and like I'm focused on them. I'm not trying, like, looking around or trying to find somebody. Like I don't get to see my friends very often. And so we're spending quality time together. And so I think an app would allow me to meet people, and it'd be better for my schedule. And I think it would open me up to more like people who are, I'm 34 now, so a lot of people aren't like going out to bars as much anymore that are my age, and if they are, we might not be as compatible. And so somebody who's just like is having a chill night, they're not. How am I supposed to meet them if we're all at home or like at a movie or with friends? And so I think as you get older, it makes it easier too. And then I do think what Jacqueline said about our users is that the world is so physically inaccessible. It must be. Can't imagine what it's like if I was a wheelchair user. And somebody's like, do you want to go get coffee at this coffee place? And then to worry or wonder or have to check to make sure that it's accessible, that I can get even in the front door. And so I think that meeting somebody online first and establishing that relationship and kind of making sure, like, is this person worth like venturing out into the world for? I think that's really like that matters, and it's worth something.
Yeah. And we're trying to also bridge those two experiences into one, and by creating like more events, and we're like doing an accessible bar crawl in Denver tomorrow, and we're trying to do community days in select cities. And so we really want to make Dateability a community and not just like this online place where like everyone can be sort of anonymous. We want people to come together and really fight the isolation that we've all experienced.
Yeah, I I think that isolation and fighting it and giving you access to people that you may not run into real time is the real pro of dating apps, right? Like you don't need to be at the bar 24/7 waiting for someone to walk through the door. You can put up a profile, come in when you are on your lunch break and start to make some sort of connections. And it does give you, I think, greater access to people that if you're having a chill night at home or you're not wanting to go out, you have that ability. But I think the cons of doing that exclusively are you don't get necessarily the real time involvement. I think you can help to bridge some of that with video calls. And I think it's now becoming more of a standard protocol, both for safety and I think just to connect with people, to maybe do a short FaceTime at first. People can spend 10-15 minutes Googling the best response to questions and then type it in the chat versus having a back and forth. And I think that's where you really get to see how is your chemistry, how can you interact. But I think there's no substitute for time, and whether that's time that is spent communicating virtually or time that's spent communicating in real life. I think that needs to be a principle of any sort of dating process. So I love the way you guys are thinking about events and community organizations. I mean, people just love coming to those to socialize. So I think that's a good way to utilize the strengths of online dating while also bridging some of those just natural shortcomings.
Yeah, and I think people forget that dating takes effort. And it's
Which is why I'm still single.
yeah, and it can it can feel like a chore sometimes. Like you do have to sit there and swipe or go through your likes
And then
or
get to know
message
somebody.
someone. Like you have to do that, whether that's in person or on a dating app. It does require effort. Like people want to see that effort too. We'll see people who may contact us and they'll say like, hey, I'm not getting any likes. And I try to send them a kind email saying like, here's our blog post on how to make a dateable profile, because putting in your bio hi isn't gonna get you a lot of interest. People want like to get to know you. And so I think that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah, I know what you mean with the high piece. I looked on at profiles, whether it's on Coffee Meets Bagel or other apps where it's like you can tell that they didn't put much effort into filling the questions out. And it's like, hello, I want to get to know you a little bit before I know if I want to chat with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like you don't want to just choose someone based on their photos. Like I know that
Right.
that's kind of what dating apps have come down to, but it's just like, yeah, you want to see that someone actually cares and like is interested in meeting someone.
Yeah, exactly. I was also curious, since we're all siblings on here, how we try to support each other with what we know about their neurodivergent or chronically ill piece.
I think for me, Jacqueline and I have lived together for 7 years, I think now. And so, yeah, obviously we lived together when we were kids, but she wasn't sick then. I left for college and she got sick when I was in the middle of college. And then I went to law school and I was 3,000 miles away. So I was kind of detached from everything. But now that we live together, I can pick up on cues. We have a dog. She's really Jacqueline's dog, but I pick up, not the slack. That's like a wrong terminology because that's not right, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When you're taking a nap, I take the dog out. I don't say anything. If I can tell you're not feeling well, I'll offer to take the dog for a walk. And I think just like asking questions and communicating and asking questions like in a nice way. Like we go for a walk, I'm like, let me know when you want to turn back. I'm good with whatever, and like no pressure. So I think just like being open and communicating with each other and being kind is most important.
Yeah, for sure. I also think that for me, it took a lot of education. Like when Jennifer went through her tests and came and said, "Hey, I have this thing on verbal learning disability." I had no idea what it meant. No one was talking about it, so it took a lot to educate myself and understand. Well, what does that mean? And what does it mean when my loved one is going through this? What is it like being in your head, being in your body with that? And Jennifer, I'll send you memes or videos of people online that are talking about their neurodivergent experiences. I'm like, oh, is this kind of what you experience? Is this your reality? And it's creates a good conversation between us, and I think it just builds more empathy. Because for me, not having that going on, it's very easy to not understand. But I think that educating oneself, learning, and doing the best you can to empathize is the first step to then being able to show up in a supportive way, and then provide alternative exercises or opportunities, or one thing Jennifer loves, you're very good at planning, and I'm much more, oh, we'll figure it out as we go along. But there is comfort in having the plan, so I'll do a better job. Okay, let me plan things a little bit farther in advance, have more specific timelines for things, just because I know that's going to something I can easily do, and it's going to give a better experience and more relaxed experience of when we're hanging out for Jennifer.
Jennifer, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
That's a good question. So I was 19, so I was in college as well, and Jonathan's 5 years older than me. So to give you an idea, and for me, like Jonathan was saying, educating himself, my parents did that as well, and trying to see what know more and learn more about what NLD is, because Jacqueline, it's invisible, right? So it's not very obvious that I have that. And I think for many people who meet me and didn't know about me having NLD, they're like, huh? Like, you like to talk, the nonverbal piece. I'm like, yeah, I like to talk, but there are a lot of parts of language that I don't understand. I mean, most of language is nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I also wanted to ask about was in your guys' experience, or experiences, I should say, have you seen what some of the typical red flags are for neurotypical versus neurodivergent, and how that shows up in the dating app world?
Yeah. Do you mean like in safety and that sort of aspect?
Yeah.
Yeah, we really try to educate our users on what red flags to look out for. And I think that a lot of people can assume that everyone knows these red flags, but for whatever reason, whether someone is neurodivergent or they've just haven't used a dating app before, people might not know these red flags, and we would just rather educate than assume that everyone knows them. And so we really try to make sure that people know not to share any personal information or the financial information. And if someone insists on going out of the app to talk, it might be a red flag. And so we try to put those tips on when you sign up for the app and then they live on the app. And it can, that's our top priority, is safety. We don't want to hear that anything bad happened to anyone. But unfortunately, as Jonathan knows, the internet is a scary place and there are bad actors everywhere. But we have tried to implement different things to reduce those. Like every profile now, this started March, has to be manually approved by me. And so that has cut down on spam accounts drastically. They're very easy to spot, and so I just don't want them on the app. And I think that has really helped people, because there are people who are more vulnerable, or people who think that disabled people are more vulnerable, and we have a zero tolerance for that. We don't want anyone to be taken advantage of on Dateability or from someone who they meet on Dateability.
I think all the red flags you mentioned are excellent ones, and the ones of like how you start to stay safe online. I think one of my favorites that came out of my work at Match Group is, and I think it's kind of specific to the dating context, is how do people react when they hear no? How do people react when they don't get their way or when you establish a boundary? Because it's easy to uh, like somebody when you're agreeing with them and everything's copacetic and you're always on the same page and you're always getting your way. And that's a very natural thing in some instances. But it's also very natural that at some point in your dating experience, someone's going to ask you to do something, going to suggest something. And for whatever reason, whatever it is, you go, I'm not interested in that, or no, not right now. And a healthy response to that is a respect. Okay, great, let's do something else. But if there's that insistence, if there's anger, if there's anything other than acceptance of that boundary, that is a huge red flag. And this is something that I think has been shown and proved out in a lot of my work. My personal life as an older brother, I tell my sister this all the time. But I think it's one of those things that, how do people respond when they don't get their way?
I like
my
that.
mom.
Yeah, I like that because remember the guy that asked me to go on a hike with him for a first date? I had literally talked to him for like 10 minutes before like we met in person, and then he was like, "Do you want to come up to this town outside of Boulder and hike?" And I'd never been to this town, and I was like, "No," because that'll be the last time my sister ever sees me. And he was like, "What? You think I'm a bad person?" And I was like, "I honestly have no idea. Like, I don't know you." And I was like, "And I'm not gonna. I'm not going to go on an isolated hike with somebody I don't know." And he kept pushing and being like, "I can't believe you think I was a bad person." And I was like, literally, I'm a woman. Like, I don't know what else, I don't know what else to say. And he kept pushing and I never saw him. I was like, I'm not like, okay, fair enough. Let's go get a drink or slice of pizza instead. Like, that was the response I was looking for.
Yeah.
And it got pushed back and like made to feel bad. Like I was accusing him of doing something when I was just like, that's not something I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
So I like the articulating how people react when somebody says no. And I used to not react well when people would say no, but I think I'm a little better now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my red flag back in the day.
I do see that with some users, when people will see something on a profile that they disagree with, they will block them, and we have a space to write why you're blocking, and someone will say like, this is hate speech, and it'll be because they have something political, but wasn't not hateful in their bio. And it's like, some people have like zero tolerance to even see that on the app, but there's people on the app that I definitely don't agree with politically, but am I gonna delete them from the app? No. They're allowed, free will, and they can think what they want.
Yeah.
But so it is really interesting, and I think that, yeah, that is a great point.
And preference is different than exclusion. Like, you can express a preference and be like, not for me. That doesn't mean not for everybody. And Alexa, the person you were talking to, 99% sure, not a serial killer, was probably fine. But if that's the way he responds when you say, no, I'm not interested in going on a hike, well, then other things that you say no to, he's probably going to react in a similar sort of way. Well, why? Why can't I have it my way?
Right.
And it's a good litmus test just for like, how does this person argue? How does this person fight? Like, are they accepting and they'll just go with it? So yeah, that's always my favorite tip.
If you're already fighting about
we were fighting, but he was trying to make me feel bad. And I'm like, you're doing this. I am like stone cold in here. You're not going to make me feel bad. I'm not going on that hike with you. It's literally in like the middle of nowhere. Like, there's like nowhere near society. I was like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah,
no,
that makes sense to me too. Like, I wouldn't have done that either. And it's like Jonathan was saying, no and consent is a very good way to see if somebody how they're good with their boundaries being set. And I think also how they're good with like you said, Alexa, suggesting other things. And I remember when I was talking with Jonathan and my parents about being on dating apps, they always made sure meet in a public place for your first couple of dates, because then if something does happen, you're around people and it's easy to leave. You don't have to necessarily make an excuse. and to you know, I'm glad that you, Jacqueline, that you manually check all the profiles too, because um, being neurodiverse, I have had instances where I've been taken advantage of, unfortunately, and uh, it is easier to, we tend to be more trusting more easily and more naive or innocent, and so it's hard for us to sometimes see when, oh, this is a bad person, or this is a con artist, or this is a red flag. It can be hard to notice sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that happens, and it's really unfortunate, and there are people out there who specifically will go in with that intention. And we just want to reduce that as much as we can. Because I mean, I'm not perfect in approving people, and sometimes I'll think that someone is not real, and they'll email me back and say, why would you delete my account? And I'm like, okay, but better safe than sorry. But it's yeah, we just like want people to have a good experience dating, and um, you know, it's always important to remember those things and those safety tips, but we don't want people to have to worry about, like, will someone accept me because of my disability? Those things, we want that to be taken care of.
Absolutely, that makes sense to me. Something I was also curious was, this might be, I want to make sure I word this question right. But for me, when I've been dating, I know sometimes this is a tricky area for me to kind of tell when the person might want to be in a serious relationship with me or not, or if they want to continue dating or not. And so I was curious if, for either of you three, uh, how that feels for a neurotypical versus a neurodiverse. Like maybe there's some nonverbal cues that come up that you don't know how to read, you know?
I will
No.
say that, yeah, I will say I think it's hard for everyone. I feel like I'm someone who doesn't like to ask if, like, are we exclusive, or like, is this going somewhere? Like, I would like to just know that instinctually, and that's not always the case. Sometimes I cannot get a read on people, and
Sometimes you assume,
yeah,
like was dating a you know who for so long, met his mom, whatever, and then I confirmed that he was my boyfriend, only to find out like he was not my boyfriend, and I was like, what have we been doing for the past 3 and 4 months? Like, okay, so yeah, you can never.
yeah,
I think you gotta ask.
yeah, I think that, like, I think I've learned that if I want something, I'm not gonna wait around until, like, I find out if I have it or not. Like, that was something that I would do in my early 20s, but
Mhm.
now, like, I'm like, I just want to be honest, and communication is key. And so, like, I'm definitely for verbal communication on
Mhm.
that. Like, I don't want someone to think like, oh, you didn't you didn't catch that. I'm like, no, you didn't tell me. So that's what I prefer.
Yeah. And I think being upfront from the beginning, like if you're dating intentionally, like you really want to get married or you really want to have kids, and you're like, listen, I'm not saying we're going to get married, but that is what I'm looking for. So if at any point you feel like that's not where we're headed, like let me know. I think that that's kind of good to be straight up in the beginning also. And so in between that time before you like have the more serious conversation, at least like it doesn't, you're not wondering as much because you were upfront about it in the beginning. But it's so hard. Dating is
Yeah.
so hard, and people are so complicated and complex, and there's a lot of nuance. So I
Yeah.
wish I had better advice.
And I'll say
I
that we're
don't.
both heterosexual, and we've only dated men. And so that is our experiences of
Mhm.
like interacting with straight men, and it can be challenging.
I mean, it's the same on this end too, though. Like it's all about communication uh, And I think making it explicit in the beginning, if you're worried about like, I don't want to come off too strong, I don't want to seem like the crazy person, you can always talk about hypotheticals. I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about, Alexa, is like, hey, this is what I'm looking for in general, not saying you, but just saying this is the path that I'm on, and asking them, what are you looking for right now? And do it in such a way where you don't have any expectations, at least in the beginning, so that people feel safe to be their authentic self. Because the last thing you want is for them to lie to you and go tell you what you think have them tell you what they think you want to hear. But then I think it's also just checking in, because dating's dynamic. I met my partner on a dating app, and in the beginning we were very clear that it was like, okay, we're just seeing each other casually. We don't live in the same place, and so that's all it's going to be. We've now been with each other for 3 years. We live together. It's wonderful and beautiful, but it took both of us coming to the point and communicating multiple times and going, okay, I've changed where I am. I want to do this. I want you to be my person. I don't want this to be anyone else. So it changes. It is nuanced and it's dynamic. And so that's where the communication, but I think normalizing that communication too. You're not the weird person for bringing it up. It's not odd to be talking about these things. That's how adults behave. They talk, they communicate.
Yeah, I think sometimes like being cool, like everyone wants to be cool. At least like when I was in my 20s, I wanted to be cool, the cool girl, kind of. But like I think being uncool is cool. Like having those conversations, like that makes you cool. Like you've got like you're good for you. Like I have a lot of respect for people who have those hard conversations.
And related to that, as someone who like I absolutely hate confrontation, and like personally, if someone could just like read my mind, and that would be great, because I have a tendency to want to just like ghost someone if I'm not interested, which is really unfair, because I think that no one should like just be upfront. Send the 2-sentence text saying it was great meeting you, but I just don't see a spark or something. It's like I would prefer be doing that, but for me it is so hard for me to say that to someone. But so I just try to remember, like, when I have to send those messages, that is the respect that I would want. I don't want to be left wondering, so I don't want anyone to have to wonder